Hi everyone, my name is Natalia. Today I'm in Warsaw and I'm excited to kick off a new series by Visegrad Insight called The Voices of Visegrad. Created on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Visegrad Fund, this series brings you a variety of voices on the current Visegrad Group issues. So here is a short recap of events from June 2025. In this episode we will cover Polish presidential elections, attacks on NGOs in Hungary together with the biggest pride parade, Czechia's energy dependency on Russia, and the NATO summit in the Netherlands. And now over to you, Karolina, who will present us with the most important conclusions from the summit.
With thousands of delegates gathering for the NATO summit in The Hague, including 45 heads of state and government, 45 foreign ministers, and 45 defense ministers, the event stood out as the most significant diplomatic meeting of June. It served as a key platform for communicating new commitments, particularly those shaping the future of EU-US relations. The Hague summit resulted in the adoption of the following declaration: united in the face of profound security threats and challenges, in particular the long-term threat posed by Russia to Euro-Atlantic security and the persistent threat of terrorism, allies commit to invest 5% of GDP annually on core defense requirements, as well as defense and security-related spending by 2035 to ensure our individual and collective obligations in accordance with Article 3 of the Washington Treaty. Allies agree that this 5% commitment will comprise two essential categories of defense investment. Allies will allocate at least 3.5% of GDP annually based on the agreed definition of NATO defense expenditure by 2035 to resource core defense requirements and to meet the NATO capability targets.
And now, let's listen to Wojciech Przewierski and Staś Kaleta discuss the summit in terms of countries' various settings and European values.
The other thing from a Central and Eastern European perspective is that, lots of these countries like Poland and the Baltics have already dedicated themselves to these targets. The issue is, will other countries do this, and will they do it as quickly? So not only was it really a kind of a trick, this defense spending target of 3.5% plus 1.5%, but also the date to do this by was pushed back to 2035, so in 10 years. So actually, it's not as impressive as it first sounds. And then also within this, this isn't a united front necessarily. Spain, for example, on the western flank, basically opted out. It said it's not going to be part of this. And so you had this, it wasn't really a unanimous statement. You had an opt-out option for Spain. And then you had other countries like Slovakia, which didn't opt out. They're part of this, but are sending a lot of mixed messaging. So for example, Fico, when he was at home and domestically, he's been saying, we will not increase defense spending by a single euro next year at all. And if we do eventually increase defense spending, it will be in this kind of dual use section where actually it'll only be in ways that benefit you civilians directly. So a lot of different options here, and not, I don't think, the kind of push that the hawkish eastern flank countries will have wanted. Obviously, Tusk will be happy, however, because in a sense, Donald Trump was appeased. And this was kind of the whole aim of this NATO summit, to make sure that Daddy Trump, as Mark Rutte had called him, wasn't angered by anything. So in that sense, it was a success. I think that also showed in the readout where, Ukraine was only mentioned really in one sentence. Trump was also mentioned a couple times. So I think an interesting summit, but as you said, two ways of looking at this.
I don't have necessarily two ways. I mean, it's not hanging in a balance. For me, there is a clear achievement of the summit and of NATO to meeting this objective. Let's remember, this is a pledge, and it will take time before NATO countries actually commit enough. There are a number of countries in NATO that have not been even meeting the previous pledge of 2% spending after the Wales summit. So it will take time also for a number of countries. But the commitment and the declaration is clear, as defense readiness, defense posture requires not just the element of hardware, it requires cash. And cash and budgets, as I repeat myself now for the third time on this episode, are statements of our values.
Please stay with us to listen to one of our speakers from State of Poland event series, Georgina Wright, commenting on EU-US relations.
that it's more than that. I mean, what annoys them is that they just think that we're an irritant, that we consume all their energy, and actually what they want to be focusing on is other things. And the easiest way to answer that is, you want to be able to focus on other things, then we need a stable Europe. And this is what we're doing to take on more of the burden. And these are the three things that we would need from you, the United States, as we figure out a new model and Europeans taking on greater responsibility for European security.
NATO summit in The Hague show that decision makers really take security seriously. First, because of the decision of spending 5% in division to 1.5% and 3.5% on defense and defense-related issues. It shows that European allies understand that they cannot only free ride on the American ally, but they have to cooperate. Moreover, Russia was stated as a threat to the alliance. It's really important for the Central Eastern European countries. It reminds me of Carl Bildt's words that the necessity of the bigger cooperation is increasing, however, its possibilities decrease. It shows that NATO can hold together.
And now let's move into the next segment of this episode and the thrilling events of the Polish presidential elections. And over to you, Karolina.
At the start of June, Poland took a sharp political turn. Karol Nawrocki, backed by the right-wing Law and Justice Party, has been elected as the country's next president, narrowly defeating Warsaw's liberal, pro-European mayor Rafał Trzaskowski in a closely watched runoff. Nawrocki won with just over 50.8% of the vote, according to the National Electoral Commission. His victory was helped by lower-than-expected turnout, around 71.6%. That's still a record for post-communist Poland, but many younger, urban voters who tend to back liberal candidates appear to have stayed home. Crucially, Nawrocki also secured the backing of the far right. Around 90% of voters who had previously supported Sławomir Mencen, the leader of the ultra-nationalist Confederation Party, swung behind him in the second round, helping him push over the finish line. This result marks a comeback for the Law and Justice Party after they lost control of parliament in 2023. And with Nawrocki now in the presidency, Poland could be heading for a period of tense cohabitation between a conservative head of state and a centrist government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán wrote on X, "What a nail-biter. Congratulations to President Nawrocki on his fantastic victory in the Polish presidential elections. We are looking forward to working with you on strengthening the Visegrad cooperation."
But Mr. Nawrocki also was very grateful, you would say, to Orbán, and his first interview to foreign media was to Mandiner, a Hungarian outlet. He got an interview with simultaneous translation on YouTube, in which he described a number of his positions. He definitely said that he admires Viktor Orbán for his political success. He wants the Visegrad group revived. He also hopes for Bucharest 9 to be revived, which I think in Hungary is less known.
10 days after the election, Prime Minister Donald Tusk survived the vote of confidence in the Polish parliament, securing his government's position despite recent political turbulence. The vote of confidence came in the wake of a presidential election loss that shook the ruling coalition and raised questions about its long-term stability. A couple of weeks after the election, some irregularities in favor of Karol Nawrocki were detected after the Supreme Court ordered votes to be recounted in 13 polling stations. On July 1st, Poland's Supreme Court chamber, responsible for election oversight, whose legitimacy is disputed by both the Polish government and European courts, has issued a resolution affirming the results of last month's presidential election, in which conservative opposition candidate Karol Nawrocki emerged victorious. While the ruling was anticipated, it has sparked controversy due to accusations of vote miscounting and ongoing concerns about the chamber's legitimacy, as it had been established by the former Law and Justice government, which endorsed Nawrocki's campaign. In its ruling, the Chamber of Extraordinary Oversight and Public Affairs acknowledged 21 confirmed election irregularities, but stated that these violations did not affect the outcome. With this decision, Nawrocki is now set to take office in August, succeeding President Andrzej Duda at the end of his second and final term.
Let's listen to Wojciech Przybylski and Staś Kaleta and tune in into Visegrad Insight podcast.
In Poland, the story I thought we could talk briefly about was the fact that there was this recount of presidential election ballots, which has found that I think 7 polling stations wrongly attributed more votes to winner Karol Nawrocki. Now, as I understand, this isn't enough to change the vote, and also this will be confirmed by a part of the Supreme Court that was established by the previous PIS government. But I think the lesson here is that there are lots of questions around, why does this recount have to happen? Why were all of these irregularities taking place? And a kind of undermining of that institution and that democratic practice, I think, would be my reading.
Yeah, well, that is a voice of concern, of course, from an outsider point of view. We have to remember that practically nearly every election there is electoral protest. There is, especially with a close result, a subtle message from the party that lost that there might be some irregularities. Mistakes can happen. But the number of the districts where it happened, where it took place, and also a clear bias that it was usually happening against the numbers of Mr. Trzaskowski, candidate of the government, put enough seed into the discourse of potential systemic irregularities.
And now over to you, Karolina, for a short sum up of electoral preferences of youth and women.
In the 2025 Polish presidential election, the political map was redrawn along generational and gender lines. The youngest voters, aged 18 to 29, decisively backed Nawrocki with 53.2% of the vote, while Trzaskowski secured 46.8%. This reversal, compared to 2023, when young people were instrumental in bringing the Democratic Coalition to power, marks a dramatic realignment. Much of this shift can be attributed to the influence of Sławomir Mencen, whose radical message dominated among young voters in the first round and appears to have carried over into the runoff. Yet, despite this ideological shift, youth engagement reached historic levels. Turnout among young voters climbed to 76.3%, a 3.5-point increase from just 2 weeks earlier. It is a remarkable sign of democratic vitality. Young people not only care about politics, they feel empowered to shape it. But they are increasingly choosing radical or anti-system options, which should give all parties pause. On the other hand, women emerged as a powerful electoral force. Their turnout exceeded that of men significantly, 73.9% compared to just 69.2%. Among women, Trzaskowski prevailed with 52.8%, driven by fears over the erosion of civil rights, particularly the threat of a total abortion ban and rollbacks in workplace protections. For many Polish women, this vote was not only political, it was personal. It is worth noting that if only women had voted, Trzaskowski would have won. But the overall turnout, though high, fell short of the threshold Trzaskowski needed to overcome Nawrocki's lead. That small difference in civic mobilization decided the election. These results reveal a nation in flux, politically engaged but polarized, energized yet uncertain about its direction. Youth and women are no longer voting as a single bloc, and that fragmentation could shape the course of Polish democracy for years to come.
Hey there, let's pause on the Polish politics for a second. If you're enjoying this video, why not join us with a Visegrad Insight subscription? It unlocks all our online content and gets you into our online events. Plus, a special treat for your listeners. Head to visegradinsight.eu, choose a yearly subscription, and apply code Visegrad25 to enjoy your 25% discount. If you want to be up to date, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up with our channel. And now let's join Karolina for the Hungarian section of the video.
The Hungarian government has delayed a controversial bill targeting foreign-funded CSOs and media, following mounting domestic opposition and warnings of potential EU sanctions. Officially postponed to study public feedback, the move also reflects deep divisions within PM Viktor Orbán's ruling circle. While some government figures and hardliners, including Orbán and Fidesz parliamentary leader Mate Kucsis, support the legislation, key ministers reportedly oppose it, fearing backlash at home and punitive action from Brussels under Article 7.
And now over to Wojciech for more details on it.
What happened also at the same time, this idea has been hugely unpopular in the public in Hungary, and a number of MPs, backbenchers, and also members of the government were voicing their opposition to the bill, saying that if that goes, it polarizes the public, and this time this polarization does not help the government.
The ruling Fidesz party, meanwhile, continues to push through a sweeping transparency bill that critics say would criminalize dissent under the guise of sovereignty protection. The proposed law would grant the controversial Sovereignty Protection Office authority to label civil society groups as threats, targeting NGOs, media outlets, and even EU-funded organizations, as well as the power to seize documents and revoke tax donations.
Mi már ma reggel itt vagyunk a Szuverenitásvédelmi Hivatal előtt, hogy tiltakozzunk az ellen a gyalázatos törvény ellen, amit nemrégiben benyújtottak a fideszesek. Gyere ki te is délután 5-kor, álljunk ellen, ne hagyjuk, hogy elrabolják a hazánkat. Nem tudjuk garantálni, uram, itt a Orbán kormány legdurvább fújkozótja idején, és munkát mutatott itt az össze.
These attacks on the public sphere by the Hungarian government are nothing new. In recent years, the right to peaceful assembly has been undermined by excessive police force and broad, indiscriminate bans on public demonstrations. CSO's representatives and activists have taken to the streets, claiming that the current protests aren't just about one proposed bill. The organizers say the demonstrations reflect broader concerns, deep frustration, and a sense that the space for public participation and dissent is under threat. For them, these protests are not just reacting to policy, they are about defending the right to question authorities or form collective organizations.
So on the 1st of June, we had a protest in Budapest. It was one of the 70 demonstrations across the country, and we were marching in complete silence. It was a demonstration against the proposed law of the so-called the transparency of public life, and they would be removed from beneficiaries list in the tax system as well. So basically what it means that even if you get just a small amount of foreign funds, you would be considered as someone who is against Hungarian sovereignty. And basically our protest showed that what the country would look like. It would be completely silent. Nobody could raise their voice against what the government is doing. But it's still like a very big step toward dictatorship for Orbán, because it really is about silencing free media and NGOs. Previous laws have been a bit more vague and not enforced, but this one a serious step. So just because it was postponed, it doesn't mean that we are in the same space, basically.
Now let's move to the Czech Republic. We would like to recommend a great piece by our fellow Albin Sibera. Over to you, Albin.
If you want to dive deeper into Czech and Slovak politics, head over to visegradinsight.eu and check out my latest article, Politics Not Pipelines Could Derail the EU's Energy Break from Russia. There, I interviewed energy and political analysts from Czechia, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia who argue that the real obstacle to the EU's 2027 phase-out of Russian fossil fuel imports isn't about infrastructure or market readiness. It's political leaders in Hungary and Slovakia who are turning energy dependence on Russia into a source of populist leverage and are aided in this by regional energy companies.
And that's all for today from the Voices of Visegrad. Thank you for staying with us. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and see you in the next episodes.